Good morning, everyone. Ryan Fournier is tweeting, quote, CBC TV in Canada has cut Donald Trump's Home Alone 2 cameo out of their broadcast. They're so triggered by him that they had to edit him out of the film. Absolutely pathetic. And here's Donald Trump responding. He says, I guess Justin T doesn't much like my making him pay up for NATO or trade. And this is Fox 13's tweet 21 hours ago saying President Trump's cameo in Home Alone 2 Lost in New York was reportedly cut from showings of the movie on Canadian broadcasts. The network says it was to make room for commercials. And yeah, that's essentially what they said. Here's CBC responding. They say CBC responds to criticism that short scene featuring Donald Trump was deleted from the movie Home Alone 2, which aired recently. Spokesperson says several cuts made for time. These edits were done in 2014 when we first acquired the film and before Mr. Trump was elected president. And here is the article about the same. It says, CBC confirmed Thursday it deleted scenes featuring Donald Trump from the movie Home Alone 2 Lost in New York, but the broadcaster says the cut occurred before he became president and was not politically motivated. Several media outlets reported Trump's cameo in the 1992 movie was edited out of the CBC broadcast of the movie earlier this month. In the uncut version, Trump appears for some 7 seconds in a scene set at the Plaza Hotel in New York when Macaulay Culkin's character, Kevin McAllister, asks him for directions to the lobby. I scroll down a little bit. CBC spokesperson Chuck Thompson confirmed Thursday that the Trump scene and others were cut from the film 5 years ago to make way for commercials. Quote, as is often the case with feature films adapted for television, Home Alone 2 was edited for time, Thompson said. The scene with Donald Trump was one of several that were cut from the movie as none of them were integral to the plot. These edits were done in 2014 when we first acquired the film and before Mr. Trump was elected president. And so, I looked here and I thought, doesn't CBC run this every year? Surely somebody would have noticed before now if Trump was cut from the scene or cut from the movie, right? And it aired in 2017. I was looking for, I changed it the year. You can hit tools and then change which year Google is searching, because sometimes when news like this happens, it overwhelms the news cycle. So you need to go before the news broke to see what people are talking about. So that's how I do that. And I changed it to 2016, there was no schedule for Home Alone 2. When I went to 2017, this came up, so it aired in 2017. And then 2018, nothing came up. It was just news about kids being home alone. And then obviously 2019, here we are. So I think it aired in 2017 based on CBC's schedule, and no outrage then. Nothing happened then. I'd love to see if it was the same version or if Mr. Trump was in that version. I don't know. I have no idea. But it seems like Home Alone came close to sparking an international incident. And Mr. Trump was none too pleased. None too pleased at all. And who knows if it happened before? I don't know. I would love to know, but I don't know. But I know it was aired. It was aired in 2017. Same version? Was Trump in that one? I don't know. Anybody got it on their PVR? Anyway, we'll see. Here we go. Here's the Globe and Mail. Moving on. I thought this was interesting because, well, the federal government is making immigration cheaper. Here we go. The federal government has committed to waiving citizenship application fees that immigration advocates say are a major barrier that stops newcomers from becoming Canadian citizens. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has asked Immigration Minister Marco Mendicino in his mandate letter to bring forward a plan to eliminate the fees. Adult applicants currently pay a $530 for processing, $530 for processing, and a $100 right of citizenship fee. Families have to pay an extra $100 for every applicant under the age of 18. A citizenship application for a family of 4 would cost $1,460. The cost is unaffordable for low-income families, says Amy Casipoli, excuse me if I've got that wrong, a senior coordinator with the Ontario Council of Agencies Serving Immigrants, which advocates for immigrants and refugees. She added that becoming citizen helps immigrants settle down and feel more connected with Canada. According to Statistics Canada, the rate of immigrants who became citizens after living for 6 years in Canada dropped to 55% in 2016, down from 70.2% in 2006. That's an incredible drop. Like that's a big drop. 15%? That's a huge, that's notable. And that is not because it's a lot more expensive, I don't think. Back to this. AM Atkab excuse me if I've got that wrong, 35 came to Canada from Syria via Turkey in 2016 and has been eligible to apply for citizenship since October, but has not done so yet because he's awaiting the removal of the fee. He lives in Montreal and works 40 to 65 hours a week in minimum wage jobs, making $12.50 per hour. His low income and the increasing cost of living in the city have kept him struggling. At this point, my jaw hit the floor. I can't believe how tone deaf these advocates are. It's not like the increasing cost of living and relatively flat wages, no wage increases, but the cost of living, the cost of taxes, the cost of everything is going up, food, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And yet, that doesn't just impact immigrants. And yet they're saying, oh, don't worry, we're gonna increase people getting their citizenship by removing these fees. So it's free to do it. The thing is, people are just becoming overwhelmed. They're too busy to even pay attention to things they should pay attention to, like their health. Right? Like the ability to go out and walk for a couple of hours every day. You should. And the ability to hang out with your kids. You should. And not have the daycare people do dinner for them. Right? That's a bad idea. Right? That's problematic. And people are just being buried within the day-to-day grind of work. Right? You got to be more efficient. We got to do more output. We got to grow that economy. To what? Import more people? Yeah, that's basically it. We just got to keep importing more people. Pay your taxes. Don't forget. And make sure you don't get shot on the way to work on the 401, right? Apparently there's machine gun fire lately. It's just tone deaf, right? And I guess this is Quebec, so there's no 401. And as far as I've heard, it's not as violent as Toronto. So maybe the comparison is a little hyperbolic. But at the same time, I don't necessarily think so. The balkanization is happening. The continual increase in price. Immigration is excuse me, not immigration. Inflation is happening yearly and the wages don't keep up, right? And with all of that happening, even if you do get a $14 hour minimum wage increase, that doesn't necessarily increase your buying power. And that is, again, problematic. Doesn't solve the problem. That's what I mean, right? They're saying, oh, here's more money. But the more money is eaten up by taxes and by fees and by all of the other stuff that you already can't afford because the increase in the wage puts more stress on your boss, right? If your boss owns a business. And so he or she has to pay you more, and that erodes the bottom line for the boss, and that thereby increases the cost to the customer, right? To make sure that the boss can still maintain the business. And it's not, the boss isn't a fat cat sitting in his back office counting his money. I mean, I think probably the people at Google are. But most of the time, small businesses are working all the time, trying to make ends meet, trying to figure out how to pay their staff while at the same time investing in the business. And I've known restaurateurs, I've known business owners who that's their main driving goal. I mean, growing the business, yeah, but taking care of their people, right? Making sure that people who work for them are taken care of. If the business fails, that's not happening, right? And if the government mandates bad policies that force the business to fail, that's not good for anybody. And that's just what's happening across the board because Trudeau's tone deaf. And then these advocates say, see, the cost of living is getting too much, so we have to make it cheaper to become Canadian citizens. Where's the disconnect? Back to the article. To apply for citizenship, I scroll down. Newcomers must prove they have lived in Canada as a permanent resident for at least 3 of the previous 5 years, have filed income taxes, and have adequate knowledge of English or French. They also have to pass the citizenship exam, which includes questions about the rights and responsibilities of Canadians and Canada's history, given government and laws. The Conservative government of Stephen Harper raised the processing fee from $100 to $300 in February 2014 and to $530 in January 2015. It also amended the Citizenship Act in 2014 to increase the residency requirements from 3 of the 4 previous years to 4 of 6 and made language and citizenship exams tougher in 2017. The Liberals reversed most of those changes. So I'm not sure what the purpose of the 3 of 5, 4 of 6, all of that stuff. Like, if you're planning on being Canadian, aside from going home for some vacations, I mean, my mom goes back to England 2 weeks every year just to visit family and stuff. And okay, sure. But if you're living there for an extended period of time, that's different, right? Because are you paying into taxes there? Do you pay taxes back into Canada? Like, there's complications that layer on top of all of that stuff. And again, well, we're going to get into the population issue, but this is a fiscal issue. This is a fiscal problem. Here's Jay Cole, and he says Ontario's population grew by an astonishing 93,000 in a single quarter. 39% of the 208,000 new Canadians, 82% immigrants. Not only are we blowing by our budget numbers, the supposed increase to 350,000 immigrants, the pressure on services and infrastructure will be noticed. Yeah. Here's the map that he's using, and it says Q3 population in Ontario. We're looking just at Ontario here. It's an interesting data tool, actually. You can choose any province you like, or all of the provinces, right? And you can see the historical year over year population growth and population numbers, etc. And so it's very, very interesting. But he's right. The population went up by 93,000. And what does that do to our infrastructure? Infrastructure is social services, housing for homeless people, all of the right down to potholes, right? How much money do we have to take care of the needs of our city, right? And when municipalities are flooded with people, they are the people on the ground. They have to deal with it, right? Toronto has been asking for money from the government to offset the cost of migrants, and yet still there's this problem that people seem to not care about. I think that's weird. Here's CBC reporting. We're everywhere now. Meet the homeless in Canada's largest city. It's people who have fallen on hard times, got divorced, lost their job, got a work injury. And I'm not going to go into detail about this. There was just one thing I wanted to highlight. There's stories, like real people's stories, and they're worth listening to. But this is one, Paul. Paul says he's lucky to have a bed at one of the city's shelters while he's on a waiting list for subsidized housing, a list that's 11 years long. Quote, we're a rich country. There's no reason for this to be happening, he says. Paul says not having a place to call his own takes a tremendous toll on his mind. You have no hopes and no dreams left anymore. You have nothing, he says. People think you are nothing, so you end up thinking you are nothing. You just eventually end up fading away slowly. Here's more from Paul, and if you want to listen to him. But here's the flip side. Oh, here's not the flip side. Here's Boxing Day. This is Sue Ann Levy, and she's reporting for Toronto Sun. She said street sleepers stand out amid Boxing Day shoppers. Mere steps from the hubbub of the Toronto Eaton Centre, where shoppers were busily trying to snare Boxing Day bargains Thursday, sat a small homeless encampment by the steps of Holy Trinity Church. Shoppers using that entrance to the Eaton Centre couldn't miss the clothing, food, half-empty naloxone kits, needles, and other drug paraphernalia strewn everywhere. The results of a ransacking on Christmas night. James, a homeless man who would only give his first name, said the knapsacks and luggage, including a backpack stolen from a harm reduction worker, had been left there, and he'd watched the street people go through them looking for drugs and anything they could sell. People ripped all that stuff. It got really out of hand here last night, he said, while leaning on his wheelchair stacked with his belongings. He tells us he's addicted to opiates and has been through 183 naloxone kits in the past year. James says he turned 40 a week ago. And here's some images of the Holy Trinity Church. This is a mess of possessions on a wheelchair ramp at the Church of the Holy Trinity outside CF Toronto Eaton Centre in Toronto, Ontario, Thursday, December 26, 2019. Yes, this is what our policies are leading to. This is what ignoring this leads to. This is what bad policies lead to. And it's not just happening in Toronto. But this is what happens when you just turn a blind eye. And I'm not saying to give out food. I'm not saying to say poor you, because they even talk about this in the article. I'm saying that the bad policies directly lead to this, making things unaffordable, like housing and electricity, and increasing taxes to pay for these ridiculous expenses, which we'll get to in a minute, is irresponsible because it directly leads to this. Back to the article. Where encampments were once hidden in ravines under bridges, as in the case of our infamous tent city on the contaminated land, they are now in plain view. No one seems to care. I went down to the Eaton Centre on Boxing Day after being sent a photo of an encampment set up at Yonge and Dundas in plain sight of tourists and shoppers. I arrived to the site of a police car, a garbage bin chock full of foodstuffs and clothes with sleeping bags and blankets stacked beside it. It would seem that the police had cleared them out after giving them a 14-day notice to vacate. Efforts to confirm this with the Toronto police were not successful Thursday. Quote, if you play the game right, you can move across the street and you're good for 14 more days and then you move back, James of the eviction process. He says he has mixed feelings about the safe injection sites, that they keep drug users free of infections but coddle the addicts. Quote, we have a mayor who doesn't want to call it what it is. He says it's a homeless crisis. It's a goddamn drug epidemic, he said. Excuse me. And here's the last little bit. This is what we're spending our money on. CBC News is reporting Toronto gets $45 million from federal government to help provide temporary housing for asylum claimants. This was reported May 9th, 2019. And Funds add 26 million. Funds add to 26 million already provided to cities since June of 2018 for costs incurred in previous years. And this is all for asylum seekers. And here's another one. This is July 16th, CBC again. Toronto getting 11 million from feds to help house refugee claimants. The federal government is giving Toronto $11 million to help it deal with an influx of asylum seekers, hundreds of whom are temporarily housed in college dormitories. Weird, right? No college dormitories for the homeless of Toronto. In order to get a college dormitory, you need to be a different class of Canadian. A Canadian is a Canadian is a Canadian, unless you walk over the border illegally, claim that you're a refugee and in need, and then you get housing, dental, healthcare, food, 3 meals a day, spending allowance. But if you fall on hard times and you lose your job or get divorced, get under a bridge, and please don't bother the shoppers. Right? Is that the world we live in? Welcome to Canada 2019. I feel like ending with John Lennon's so this is Christmas. I'm not going to, because it's a little trite. But man, this is where we are, right? A post-national society gone woke. And what happens when you go woke? Right? What's happened to our country? Awful. Thanks for watching, everybody. Check out CanadaPoly.com and have a wonderful, wonderful